Hello everybody, this is Peter47890/Cyrus, and I'm here to basically give my first impressions of Persona 5, as well as briefly talk about my future plans on making a video review on the game in the future. Anyway, my first impression of Persona 5 is that it's really good from what I've played. And I played around 20 to 30 hours now, and I'm on the 3rd dungeon, which you might think is substantial, but I probably think that I'm only at the 25% mark, just looking at my level and knowing how many dungeons there are in the game. Anyway, the first thing I talk about Persona 5 is that mechanically, it's still very much a Persona game. You still got a time management system that requires you to balance between your social life aspect and dungeon crawling segments. You still got the press turn system, with the turn-based combat having an emphasis on hitting enemy weaknesses to have more turns and deal absurd amount of damage. You still got the social life aspect in terms of raising an affinity with the character to both learn more about the character as well as strengthening yourself from the Arcana system. You still got Persona fusion, you still got the high school setting, and etc. Persona 5 at its core is still a Persona game, and like the previous Persona games, it does these elements exceptionally well, but it's still able to keep its identity, and that identity is definitely interesting. Firstly, I just had to comment on how stylish the game is. Persona 5 is just oozing with style with its presentation. From how the game world is presented to the UI, there's just this slick style to the game that really draws you in. Especially with the character expression cut-ins you see at times, that really makes it feel like you're watching a comic or manga in motion. The color palette is also especially striking, most notably with its dark shadows and the color red. Red especially stands out in this game. Another thing that I want to comment is the cast of characters, which is to say, I really like them. They're all pretty interesting, distinct, and likable, and the cast just have this outcast vibe to them, almost even vigilante vibe to them, that both fit the type of story that the game wants to tell, but as well make the cast of characters really stand out from the past cast of characters that we had in a Persona game. And in terms of tone, I would say this game is darker than Persona 4, but if you're asking if it's darker than Persona 2 or 3, I still don't know yet, and I think it's a bit too early to make a clear judgment on that department. But suffice to say, I am enjoying the character and story. Now the next thing that probably stand out in this game is the dungeon design. The dungeon design is light years ahead of Persona 3 and 4. No longer do we have randomly generated dungeons. We actually have handcrafted dungeons, with the dungeons themselves being fun to traverse to, are visually interesting, and the actual design of the dungeons are pretty good, with there being decent puzzles, good safe room positions, which allow you to save your progress in the dungeon, and even actual shortcuts that you would find in a Souls game. And the sneaking cover system actually makes traversing through the dungeons really fun. The dungeons in this game are just glorious. The combat system is also engaging. The overall combat system is still the press turn system that Persona 3 and 4 uses, with there being emphasis on hitting enemy weaknesses to get the upper hand, with you getting more turns by hitting their weaknesses as well as dealing heavy amount of damage. But you also have to be wary of enemies hitting your party or your own weaknesses, which make battles tense and engaging. But there are some neat changes to the system. For one, I do find that stats effects are actually more deadly in this game than past game, with you being able to deal more damage to an enemy when they're under a certain status effect, which does make status effect attacks more viable now. The other mechanic is the baton pass mechanic that you gain access to once your party member affinity or Arcana rank is to rank 2, where if you hit enemy weakness, you're actually able to give your extra turn to an ally that has unlocked Baton Pass. But the added benefit is that the ally that you're giving your turn to is strengthened, which does change the dynamic of the battle in an interesting way, especially when you want to conserve SP or just want to deal more powerful attacks to an enemy, or if you want to do a certain spell on an enemy. The combat UI is also slick as all heck, and the animation you see in the combat is just mesmerizing, especially the all-out attack finishers. They're just so cool to witness. The next big change in the combat system is probably the hold up mechanic. Now, when you're able to stun all the enemies by hitting their weaknesses or critting them, you go into the hold-up mechanic where you have a choice to either do an all-out attack, which is a powerful attack where every party member is, well, able to do an all-out attack on an enemy. You're also able to go into negotiations with the shadows that either give you money or items, or you can even ask them to join you. Now this is the part where I'm iffy at, which is to say the negotiations mechanic. The negotiation mechanic is a mechanic that was in other Shin Megami Tensei games, and I was never really a fan of it, and I can't say I'm a fan of it here. Now in terms of how negotiations is handled in Persona 5, the only problem I have with it is actually trying to negotiate shadows to join you. Now I'm fine asking money or items part since you are still going to get something from using the option, and from there it's just a clear-cut choice between if should you get an item or money from an enemy and risk losing experience, or should you just destroy these bunch of shadows in order to get the most experience as you can, or using negotiations to get out of battles that you think you might not be able to handle at the moment. And overall, that part of the negotiation system is a good risk and reward system. The part that I'm not okay with is asking the shadows to join you, which is the main way how you get personas. My main problem with this part of the negotiation is that you're basically having to play multiple choice, with there being no discernible pattern. You can sort of guess the answer with the appearance and the question asked, but that's still not a good enough indication of knowing what the right choice is, and you're still just picking randomly, which is really annoying. And with how this is the main way of how you get personas in the game, yeah, not a fan of it. Velvet negotiations in Persona 5 isn't as bad as other Shin Megami Tensei games, and there is a 100% chance of asking a shadow to join you if they surrender to you, but it's still an annoying mechanic with how random it can be. Anyway, that's more or less my impression of the game. Suffice to say, I'm really enjoying the game a lot. There are some problems, like I don't like negotiations still, and I do think that the Baton Pass should come at rank 1 with how integral it is to the combat system, but overall, even with the small problem and annoyances, I'm really digging the game. And now to talk about my future plans on a video review on Persona 5. You would think it would be a no-brainer since I am really enjoying the game and I would really want to share my thoughts on it in a video review, but with Atlus's video and streaming policies are what they are now, I'm having reservations. Now for those who don't know, Atlus just released a statement about how much you can show off in their game, with both content creators in YouTube and Twitch streamers not being allowed to show content beyond July 7th, the in-game date of July 7th that is. And if you do so, you'll get a copyright claim, which isn't so bad, or even a copyright strike, which is really bad. Now I do find it admirable that they want to try avoid spoilers for the game on social media, but I do think they are going about it in a wrong way. But that's besides the point. I'm hesitant about making a video review on Persona 5 when I complete the game, just because when I make my video reviews, I do want to give the people that actually watch my reviews a glimpse of what the endgame or mid-game plays like in terms of gameplay. Now, in talking about the story in my reviews, I usually do try to be broad and give my analysis of the story without giving away too much story. But for gameplay, I usually really go in depth, and I think not being able to show you guys that will really impede on that. Albeit I have made video reviews where I show pictures, but I was still able to show you late game pictures to emphasize my point. Suffice to say that if I make a video review based on these restrictions, I probably won't be able to make a video review that I'd be proud of, that I know that I gave my 100% on. It's just based on how I made my reviews to this point. Now with that said, it's not a sure thing that I'm not going to make a video review on Persona 5. I'm still half and half on it. I might make a video review on Persona 5 still, but I still be making it in my own style. But the tricky thing is if I'm going to upload it. I probably wait a few weeks after I beat the game and finish making a Persona 5 review to see if the policy is either changed or if these policies were just temporary. Anyway, that's all I have to say on the matter. I just thought I would share my thoughts on Atlus's policy and my plans for a future Persona 5 review. Anyway, take care everybody.